Tonight on Legislative Review. Excessive speeding and reckless driving. Plus, helping farmers in rural areas recover damaged produce caused by wildlife. And a contentious legislation to cap rent increases is heard in the Senate. All that coming up on Legislative Review. Welcome to Legislative Review, your source for daily highlights in the state legislature. I'm Angela Nolasco. We're starting our coverage in the House with our high beams on a bill introduced by a bipartisan group of senators concerning reckless driving. Senate Bill 5238, which passed in the Senate last month and heard by the House Community Safety Committee Tuesday, could change how state law addresses reckless driving, especially when it comes to speeding. The bill would make it clear that driving at least 30 miles per hour over the limit is considered reckless and could face serious consequences. A conviction could lead to up to a year in jail, a fine of up to $5,000, and a mandatory 30-day suspension of the driver's license. Under current law, a person may be charged with reckless driving if they operate their vehicle with willful or wanton disregard for the safety of others. Senate Bill 5238 aims to expand that definition by specifically targeting cases where a driver exceeds the posted speed limit by more than 30 miles per hour. Republican Senator Ron Mazzal, who co-sponsored the bill with Democratic Senator Marco Lias, testified to the committee.
We have individuals on our state highways that are risking all of our lives for the fun of it.
Tell me about it.
The truth of the matter is that legally they can be charged with reckless driving, but it's got to be proven that they were reckless. So they can be charged with 30 miles an hour with the speed limit. They can put reckless on the ticket, but then it has to be proved in court that they were driving recklessly. Mm-hmm. I was interviewed and they said, well, are you trying to put people in jail? And I said, no. The fact is accountability keeps people from ending up there. And honestly, after serving in the fire service for 20 years, I'm pretty tired of picking up pieces. Mm-hmm. And this is one way that we're going to be able to hold them at a level of accountability when we do catch them exceeding speed limits.
Advocates say excessive speeding is a major factor in accidents, injuries, and fatalities, and that the bill could serve as a deterrent for dangerous driving and help reduce traffic incidents across the state. King County Felony Traffic Prosecutor Amy Friedheim offered her recommendations to the bill's language.
You need to remove the word intentional because, Senator, what that means is that I have to prove that you intended to speed 30 or more miles per hour, which no prosecutor is ever going to charge under that prong, because all the person has to do is say, well, I knew I was going 30, but I didn't intend to go 30.
Others recommended changes that would put the threshold speed for reckless driving to 20 miles per hour instead, and speed limiter devices for violators on restricted licenses. No one publicly testified to oppose the bill. Still in the House, legislation aimed at helping farmers, specifically those who deal with crop damage caused by wild deer and elk. The House Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee convened Wednesday morning to discuss Senate Bill 5165, which passed unanimously last month. It seeks to address the compensation commercial crop owners receive from the Department of Fish and Wildlife when their produce suffers damage from wild deer and elk. This involves Washington state's 12 so-called Frontier 1 counties, those with a population density of 21 people or less per square mile. Counties so rural and sparsely populated that experience more wildlife interference than others. Currently, farmers eligible to receive compensation need to meet certain criteria, such as showing proof that the damage isn't covered by insurance and that they took preventive measures. The claims are prioritized based on the severity of the loss, with payment amounts depending on available funding. The bill seeks to change that by reserving at least 20% of crop damage funding specifically for claims from Frontier 1 counties. It will ensure that at least 1/5 of the available funds for crop damage compensation will be allocated to them. If claims from these counties don't use up the full 20%, the remaining funds can then be distributed to other eligible farmers. The bill was sponsored by Republican Senator Shelley Short.
increased deer and elk damage, I think in part due to the increasing numbers of predators, which we would expect, but they're landing in our constituents' orchards and farm fields. And as they continue to do their hard work to feed the state and really the nation and the world, frankly, it's just a program that offers the potential for them to have some relief from those damages. The bill does not change what they have to do. There's restrictions on who can do it as property owners. They have to be farmers, and they have to go through an appraisal process.
Supporters say it will protect the livelihoods of farmers in areas where wildlife damage can have a devastating impact on their crops, so they don't fall through the cracks. While no one testified publicly on the bill for this hearing, there were previous concerns about potential incidents where there might be insufficient claims from counties to meet the 20% threshold, as well as requests for the bill to clarify whether the Frontier County designation should be based on the business location or where farmers grow their crops. Senate Bill 5165 is scheduled for further hearings.
People can't keep up. They can't keep up with rent. They can't keep up with groceries. They can't keep up with gas. They can't keep up with childcare. They're working hard. They're trying to retire and they can't keep up. This is one way that we can help. Listen to the people.
We now move to the Senate, where a controversial bill that aims to balance landlord protections and tenants' rights was the subject of a public hearing held by the Housing Committee Wednesday afternoon. House Bill 1217, which the House passed last month on a 53-42 vote, aims to limit rent increases to 7% within 12 months and prohibits rent hikes during the first year of a tenancy, with certain exemptions. It also proposes to require landlords to provide a minimum of 90 days' notice before raising rent and sets new limits on move-in fees, security deposits, and late fees. For example, late fees can't exceed 2% of rent for the first month, and they gradually increase over consecutive months, but only to a maximum of 5% after 3 months. During the hearing, the bill's prime sponsor, Democratic Senator Emily Alvarado, shared her remarks.
This bill is about people. There are 40% of the people in this state are renters or manufactured homeowners, and they have zero protections right now about how high their rent can go. We've heard from the opposition, we've heard from landlords, and we've made significant changes. We've heard from developers, and we've made significant changes. And now what's left is a basic bill that provides one simple iota of predictability for tenants.
Supporters say it will help prevent housing instability, which is a growing concern in many communities. They see it as a big win for renters' rights and a step toward fairer housing policies, giving renters adequate time to plan for any financial adjustments as their rent goes up, and deterring any excessive charges for rent and other fees. The bill received support from Habitat for Humanity Seattle.
If you can't afford rent, you'll never be able to move along the continuum and afford a home. Having predictable and stable rent provides our potential home buyers to continue to plan on savings and assisting getting their first home.
But not everyone agrees. Some landlords argue that the rent cap could discourage investment in rental properties, especially in areas where maintaining and upgrading properties requires higher rents. Critics, like those from the commercial real estate industry, also caution that it could create unintended consequences for the rental market, like neighborhoods where rents are already high. Speaking in opposition, Emily Thompson of GMD Development.
Because our low-income partnerships do not qualify for the exemption, then we can no longer justify the risk to develop and operate in Washington. The system will produce less housing. Because this bill discriminates against certain affordable property owners, it discriminates against low-income housing.
In addition to capping rent, the bill also introduces changes that apply specifically to mobile home parks. For example, landlords in these communities can only increase rent once per year, and certain exemptions allow for modest rent hikes in special circumstances, such as the sale of a mobile home park. Beyond the rent changes, the bill will also give tenants the power to terminate their lease if a landlord violates the new rent rules, should the bill become law. That's it for today's highlights on the state legislature. Stay up to date by watching Legislative Review every night at 8 and 11 p.m. and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you then.